Thank you, Dr. Sharif. I will share with you that some of you have already found me and are already following me on Instagram, and we have some pictures together. So thank you so much. I'm glad that Instagram works. I do want to thank His Excellency, the ministers, the distinguished guests, the organizing committee, the students and participants that are here, and I also want to acknowledge the more than 1,000 registrants that have applied to watch this virtually that are watching us now and will watch this down the road. I want to thank all of you for joining us for this amazing event. I have the honor of moderating the next panel, which is about academic leadership. We're going to talk about advancing space innovation with global partners. What I'd like to do is invite our panelists to come up, and then we'll have our keynote, and then we'll do some Q&A. And those of you in the audience are more than welcome to share your questions with us, or I do have some prepared questions. But we have an amazing lineup, so I will introduce our panelists. The panelists that are here with us today are Professor Dr. Moulay Hassan Habib, the president of Cadi Ayyad University, Morocco. Professor Abdelaziz Benjouad, the Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Partnerships at the International University of Rabat. Professor Dr. Rahil Kamar, TI, the Head of Science and Technology for ICESCO, and the former Rector of Comstat University of Information Technology, Islamabad, Pakistan. Professor Dr. Elchin Babayev, the Rector for Baku State University, Azerbaijan. Ms. Christina Korp, the Astronaut Wrangler, the Director of Space for a Better World. And Professor Dr. Alim Rustum, I hope I got that right, Rustum Aslam, close. Astronautical Engineering Department is Istanbul Technical University, Turkey. And we have joining us virtually, yes? Okay. And joining us virtually as our keynote speaker is Professor Dr. Siniche Nakasuka, who is the professor of the Department of Aeronautics and Astronautics, Graduate School of Engineering, University of Tokyo. And if the professor is here, I will introduce him first, and he will give his keynote remarks. The professor graduated from the Graduate School of the University of Tokyo with a doctorate course in 1988, received a PhD in aeronautics. He joined IBM Research in 1988, joined the University of Tokyo in 1990 as a lecturer, and has been an associate professor of the Department of Aeronautics and Astronautics since 1993. His research fields include space systems design and operation, navigation, guidance and control, small sats, autonomy and intelligence for space systems, space robotics, machine learning. He knows a little bit about CANSAT, so he's a great speaker for today. He's a member of the Japanese Society for the Aeronautical and Space Science, American Institute for Astronautics and Aeronautics, SICE, and Japan Rocket Society. So ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce Professor Nakasuki.
Participate in this very wonderful event. And so I'd like to talk to you about activity of Japan about CANSAT and also the follow-on satellite project. Let me share the screen. Can you see this? So, first, how many satellites were launched in Japan from university? So we already have more than 55 university satellites have been launched in this time frame. And most of the university who launched the satellite have been trained themselves by the CANSAT. It is a very small CAN-sized satellite. And so this is the image of the CANSAT. So many universities develop the student to develop the CANSAT, into which the student implement all the satellite bus function as well as mission function. And it brought them to the United States to launch using amateur rocket to the height of the 3.6 kilometer. And during the descent, the student can do a lot of experiment, just like using a satellite. This event is called the ALICE, Annual Rocket Launch for the International Student Satellite Event, which started in 1999. We already have 21 times. And as you see that the more and more Japanese and the foreign universities are attending this event, and currently more than 150 students get together in the Black Rock Desert in the Nevada states. And so maybe you can see the image of the launch of this ALICE rocket. So it's a very good opportunity for the student to test their satellite, very small satellite in the real, very near real environment. And we started a very interesting competition called the Comeback Competition in 2001. In this competition, we designated a certain target point on the desert and whose latitude and longitude is registered in the CANSAT. And the CANSAT, by using the GPS information, should autonomously come back to the target point, and the one which comes nearest to the target point will win the competition. Very, very simple, rule. And we have a different type of the comeback, CANSAT, like this kind of the fixed wing type or parafoil type, or the rovers, which after landing cut the parachute and moving back to the target point by using wheels. And for example, University of Tohoku University have been participating using this kind of rover, and they gained a lot of experiences and skills. And they are now developing, lunar rover Hakuto, which will be launched to the actual lunar surface next year. So in this way, by using this kind of the CANSAT experiment, many universities are gaining their own skills of the space technology. Let me show some example of our university's activity. In 2017, our university team approached 1.3 meters to the target by GPS information. But GPS accuracy is not so high, and then it automatically started image navigation to further near to the target. But it does not move anymore. So this is because the sunlight is coming from a bad direction. So, but they have a second chance. After 2 days, they modify the software and achieve the 0 meter to the target. So this is a very good occasion for the student to train themselves for the something like a problem solving. So this is very good problem solving education. And also we can do this kind of experiment with a low cost and quick development. That is a very important characteristics of the CANSAT. Based on the CANSAT experiences and skills, many universities started their own satellite development. And our university started the CubeSat development in 2000, and we successfully launched the world first CubeSat in 2003. And it cost very low, and we expected it to survive in space for about a half year. But fortunately, it has been surviving in space for more than 19 years. Maybe so it goes without saying that this kind of the micro nano pico satellite or CANSAT does a very good contribution to the many field. For example, practical training of whole cycle of space project can be done for the student, starting from a mission conceptualization, satellite design, fabrication, ground test modification, launch and operation. Through this process, students can learn what is important and what is not so important. And also it is very important for the engineering education because the student can get the feedbacks from the real world. And also, it is very good for project management, for important management tasks, time, human risk, cost and time, human resource, cost and risk management can be trained using the practical project. So as a result, this kind of activity contribute not only to the space, but also contribute to the other technological areas. Let me show the several satellites which developed within our laboratory. So this is the Hodoyoshi 3 and 4, about a 60-kilogram satellite launched in our building. And we made a target like this, and it has a very good capability of the attitude control, downlink capability, and the power supply. So, and it could obtain this kind of the picture about a 6-meter ground resolution. Using this kind of the picture, we can do a lot of things, like monitoring of the agriculture field or monitoring of the disaster in the mountainside and so on. And based on this Hodoyoshi satellite technology, we also went into the deep space using the Procyon, which was the world's first 60-kilogram class deep space probe, which was developed within just 14 months. And it went into the deep space, and 1-year experiment of the communication, navigation, and control was successful. And now the students are working on the 6U CubeSat, 10, 20, 30 centimeter size, very small satellite, which is now planned to be launched by the NASA's SLS in this summer to the moon direction. And the target is Earth Moon Lagrange point 2, using this kind of the very, very complicated trajectory in order to reduce the required fuel. Also, we started several venture company like Aerospace, which is now trying to obtain 20 satellite constellation by 2025 or 6. And their satellite Axel Glues, which has a 2.5-meter resolution, could obtain this kind of the picture. And now they have the 5 satellite constellation. Also, we started the SAR satellite in a company called the Synspective, which launched their first satellite 2 years ago. And we developed their bus system for the satellite. And they launched the second one, and also targeting the 20 or 30 satellite constellation by 2025 or 6. University community is very important. We started the UNISEC University Space Engineering Consortium in Japan in 2002, starting from just 5 universities. And now it's become a very big organization, including more than 50 universities. And its mission is education and human resource training, and also innovative space technology development. And we supported the student activity in many areas, like a joint experiment and so on. And this UNISEC contributed a lot to the development of the university satellite, which I showed before. And now we are now trying to step up from the domestic community to the international community in the name of UNISEC Global. We already have 23 local chapters, like UNISEC Germany, UNISEC Kazakhstan, and so on. And many universities have been joining this UNISEC Global framework. And every year we are getting together to a certain country to have a UNISEC Global meeting. And this year we will have it in Turkey in this October. And the UNISEC Global are providing some forum, conference, technical competitions, training program like a CANSAT leader training program, and various other activities have been provided in the UNISEC Global framework. Finally, I'd like to summarize our laboratory's activities. We developed total 13 satellites, which have been already successfully launched into the space, starting from education, space science, Earth observation, technology demonstration, and the capacity building support to the Vietnam using a Micro Dragon satellite, and Rwanda using a RuaSat-1, and the space exploration using a Procyon, and the entertainment, and now we are developing the 6U versatile satellite. So finally, I'd like to show the pictures very long time ago, 2001. So this showed the student in our laboratory at the time. So it is myself, and this guy became a project manager of Hayabusa to very, very successful deep space mission, and professor of university. And he went to the MIT and NASA JPL and SpaceX now. And the satellite developers. In this way, CANSAT and micro nano satellite have made a huge contribution to human resource training. So that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Nakasuka. Thank you so much for your amazing presentation. So what I'd like to do now is open it up to our panelists by allowing them to provide some opening remarks. So I'd like to start. Professor Abdelaziz, you are closest, so if you will provide your opening comments, and we'll ask everyone to provide opening comments for 1 to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Je voudrais tout d'abord, bien sûr, exprimer ma joie d'être parmi ce panéliste. Et je voudrais remercier l'ICESCO et les organisateurs d'abord pour cet événement sur un sujet d'actualité, surtout qui tombe à point nommé avec les images que nous avons reçues tous il y a quelques jours du web télescope, le télescope web, et qui nous ont émerveillés tous. Et nous avons ici quelques images vraiment qui captent le cœur et certainement un bon moyen de motiver à la fois les décideurs, mais également les universitaires et les étudiants et le monde, je dirais, de l'industrie et le monde de l'économie avec tout ce que le spatial aujourd'hui offre comme des opportunités. Je voudrais également saluer et remercier donc l'ICESCO et les organisateurs d'avoir planifié ce panel avec les universitaires, avec les académiques. Je pense que les universitaires, je représente ici l'Université internationale de Rabat, je tiens à excuser le président de l'université qui était avec nous au niveau de la séance d'ouverture, mais malheureusement pour des contraintes purement administratives, une réunion imprévue, donc a été programmée, il était obligé de nous quitter. Mais il apporte tout ce soutien à cette belle initiative. Et les universitaires aujourd'hui ont plus qu'un rôle à jouer. D'abord, à travers l'actualisation des curriculums, nous avons parlé aujourd'hui, et les interventions avant ont souligné l'importance du milieu académique, de la recherche et de l'innovation dans ce domaine qui est en pleine évolution et évolue tellement rapide qu'il appelle à également une actualisation des curriculums, mais également une actualisation de l'approche en matière de recherche et en matière d'exploitation des données qui viennent du spatial. Il y a aujourd'hui de nouvelles compétences à développer au niveau des universités et la présence de ce panel le justifie pleinement. Il y a également la promotion de l'entrepreneuriat. Je pense que c'est un domaine où aujourd'hui il ouvre beaucoup d'opportunités à des jeunes de créer un certain nombre, je dirais, de start-up dans le domaine de l'exploitation des technologies du spatial notamment. Il y a également la coopération internationale. Les universités aujourd'hui évoluent dans des réseaux internationaux de recherche et d'innovation et leur rôle de mettre à contribution un certain nombre, je dirais, d'universitaires, de chercheurs de renom dans un esprit de complémentarité, comme ça a été dit, pas dans un esprit de compétition, sont à même d'apporter la meilleure manière de former les jeunes et de les inciter dans cette voie. Et enfin, le rôle des universités également de la formation continue. C'est un domaine où les connaissances évoluent tellement vite qu'il y a nécessité de former les formateurs, de former les professionnels qui exercent dans ce domaine-là. Et c'est là un rôle de l'université. Donc le spatial aujourd'hui connaît une profonde, je dirais, accélération au niveau technologique et il devient également un élément important pour la souveraineté des États. Il y a un certain nombre de domaines où tous les États, qu'ils soient des États industrialisés ou pas, sont aujourd'hui appelés, je dirais, à s'investir dans ce domaine, à le maîtriser parce que ça va de leur souveraineté. Aujourd'hui, pour les domaines d'application, que ce soit au niveau de l'agriculture, au niveau de la santé, au niveau de la surveillance des territoires, au niveau même de la planification urbaine, il est nécessaire de maîtriser, je dirais, la technologie du spatial, et les universités sont appelées à jouer un rôle important dans la préparation du capital humain nécessaire à cet effet. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Donc, d'abord, je tiens à remercier l'ICESCO d'avoir associé l'Université Cadi Ayyad à cet événement et à l'organisation. Nous sommes contents d'y participer et de travailler parce que c'est un domaine, comme vient de le dire mon collègue, c'est un domaine qui devient de plus en plus intéressant et qui touche pratiquement à tous les côtés de la science. Mais je voudrais quand même voir à partir de l'exposé que nous avons vu du collègue de l'université de Tokyo, on part d'un projet où il y avait 3-4 universités à un projet où il y avait 50 universités. C'est-à-dire qu'aujourd'hui, nous avons, normalement, il est à souligner que nous avons, à l'ère de la mondialisation, nous avons besoin d'avoir un écosystème universitaire connecté. Je me souviens d'une belle initiative lancée par son Excellence Modibo Diarra sur l'université virtuelle africaine en exploitant tout ce qui était toutes les bandes passantes par satellite pour connecter des cours. C'était en 2002-2003, avant qu'on commence à parler des MOOC et tout ce qu'on est en train d'entreprendre en pédagogie numérique aujourd'hui ou des cours à distance qu'on fasse aujourd'hui. Merci beaucoup pour cette initiative et j'espère qu'elle est en train de prospérer et qu'il va être multiplié parce que l'objectif est de fédérer les efforts et mutualiser les moyens pour faire bénéficier nos étudiants et nos chercheurs qui prendront la relève de l'acquisition de la transition des savoirs et qui feront bénéficier l'humanité entière. À l'Université Cadi Ayyad, que j'ai l'honneur de présider, nous sommes conscients de l'aspect crucial de cette ouverture et de cette connexion, et nous considérons de ce fait que l'internationalisation comme axe stratégique qui porte la stratégie de l'université, l'Université Cadi Ayyad s'inscrit de manière volontariste dans une dynamique d'ouverture sur le monde et en fait un levier de sa politique de calibrage aux standards internationaux. Mais avant d'ajuster, de savoir des programmes universitaires ou des diplômes pour préparer correctement les étudiants aux disciplines comme celle de l'espace, il faut préparer un terrain affranchi des frontières entre étudiants et scientifiques du monde. Et c'est ainsi que l'internationalisation est un axe qui permet la mise en œuvre d'actions à même de garantir cette ouverture. L'internationalisation nous permet d'être à l'écoute des problèmes du monde et au développement de thématiques prioritaires de notre monde. Mais l'astronomie, certes, comme vous l'avez mentionné, est une thématique naissante. Bien qu'il soit vieil, hein, l'astronomie n'est pas d'aujourd'hui, mais il a repris depuis les Grecs, les Chaldéens, les Arabes. Cependant, il a connu ces dernières décennies une accélération remarquable par la force de la digitalisation et le développement de nouvelles technologies. D'un autre côté, et comme toutes les disciplines émergentes ou innovantes, il est nécessaire de recruter des spécialistes des sciences spatiales et les inciter à organiser des diplômes spatials de type master spécialisé, ainsi que des filières dans des domaines de la sensibilisation également. C'est un facteur majeur pour orienter les étudiants vers cette discipline qui devient une discipline transversale. Il est donc investir dans l'organisation de forums, de séminaires, comme celui de l'ICESCO que l'ICESCO organise aujourd'hui. À l'Université Cadi Ayyad, nous avons déjà expérimenté cette stratégie avec un certain succès. L'Observatoire de l'Ukaïmden, sous la direction du professeur Zouhair Ben Khaldoun, ici présent, et sa success story ont beaucoup contribué dans ce sens par l'organisation de Space Bus pour la mise en place de clubs d'astronomie, d'associations d'astronomie. Donc c'est des manières d'inciter nos étudiants et nos chercheurs à s'intéresser à ce domaine qui devient de plus en plus un domaine très important et très prometteur pour le développement économique et social, sachant que c'est une science fondamentale. Merci.
Hello. I will also thank organizers for this important event. I remember meeting Dr. Sharif late 2021 in Pakistan, and then he asked me for such an event, and it's been only, I will say, over 6 or 7 months, and now we are here. So such a fast organization of such good events doesn't happen quite often. So I also congratulate the organizers from that perspective. Since morning, we have heard excellent, inspiring, informative talks. And I think if we summarize that, we just say we are going to space. So on Earth, we have many problems, even the simple problem of hunger, poverty, and such, but yet we are going to space, and all of us are going to space. And I think we should get ready to be a living civilization in low Earth orbit and beyond, and we have to get ready for that. And, well, you may not have a space engineering department or space-related courses, or I think I would say that's what you think, because space is multidisciplinary, it is multinational, and it requires a good teamwork. And actually, any curriculum, any information can be linked to space work, and actually that's what we do. And we will try to do that this week. Thank you.
I think this is working. Thank you, Shelley, for moderating this session. She's my space sister, and I think I probably have more space sisters in the room over there. I can see them back there, and my friend, Dr. Proctor. Thank you, Director General. Thank you, Dr. Sharif, and esteemed guests. And I am really excited to be here. This is my first time in Morocco. I am not a professor. I do not work at a university. However, I do deal in, I guess you could say, I feel like one of my PhDs is in space inspiration. I am the unlikely person to work in space. I came from the entertainment world. I was a singer for many years and traveled all over the world. And then I fell into space when I went to work for Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon. And this was not the plan for my life. I fell into space kind of by accident. Now I've been working in space for over 14 years. I am now a space veteran. And I have become very, very passionate about trying to find ways to invite more people like me. My mission statement is, I'm trying to connect the space curious with the space serious, because I am deep in the space serious world. I deal with NASA, I deal with European Space Agency, many, many heads of many, many space agencies and space organizations all over the world. But more than that, I have become the witness to the impact of what space has done to the world, to inspire people, to move the hearts and minds of people from all over the world, from every walk of life. And so I've become very, very passionate about trying to connect every aspect of both the mainstream world, educational worlds of children, into universities, and all the way up into industry. I do a lot of international partnerships. I do a lot of partnerships between schools and universities and companies. And I think that the key, though, is inspiration. Space is not something that we have to convince a lot of people is an exciting thing. You know, with the John Webb Space Telescope and this image behind us, this has excited the world in a way that I haven't seen outside of space in a long time. every human on Earth can appreciate what space is, looking at the moon, looking at the stars. It unites us as humans. I know many, many astronauts because I worked with the rock star of all astronauts, Buzz Aldrin. And so I have said this many times, every astronaut I've ever met worked so hard to go to space only to discover the Earth, every single one of them. And I think that that perspective is so valuable. And what's exciting about that and relating it to satellites is that it's something that satellites help us look back at Earth, help us provide data for Earth. You know, there are many people who think space has nothing to do with them. And I will always say, we live on a planet in space. Space is not something that's far away from us. It's something that we are all a part of. So hopefully we can invite more and more people to be a part of space who are not naturally a part of it or who don't think that there is a place for them in part of it. I spoke at International Space University last month at the graduation program for the master's program. And half of that graduating class were women. And half of those ladies came to me saying they were worried they were not going to be able to find a job in space. So I'm here to try to explain there is room for you in space. There are jobs for you in space. I'm a good example of someone who never thought that I would ever work in space. And I work in deep space with many astronauts and many women. So I'm hoping that my presence here, Dr. Proctor's presence here, Shelley's presence here, especially for you young ladies who are in this audience, will understand there is room for you in space, and we're here to help welcome you into it. Thank you very much.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much for all of you to come to this symposium and for the workshop and all that. We are really grateful to you, to everybody. We are certainly living in very, very exciting times, you know, with the, more and more talk about space and the awareness coming up. And I sort of pinpoint all of this to the point where the commercial industry came into the space program with, you know, Elon Musk and all the other people when they jumped into the space industry, into space travel and all that. That is where the real excitement began. And that is where we all started seeing the real potential of what we can do in space and all the technologies that we can develop in space and translate that back onto this planet to solve all our SDG and all other problems. Man has forever been seeking knowledge. And till the 1900, our knowledge was doubling every 100 years. After the World War II, our knowledge started doubling every 26 years. Currently, the knowledge that the whole of knowledge that humanity has, you know, discovered is doubled every 13 months. But with the introduction of IoT and other technologies, this knowledge will double every 13 hours. And that is a tremendous amount of knowledge that we can acquire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran also that the knowledge that I have revealed upon you is not even 1/zillionth of the knowledge that I have created in totality. So imagine what we can learn. The biggest example of collaborative work was the Large Hadron Collider to begin with, and you know, the space station and all that. And the Large Hadron Collider has generated so much data that we are still analyzing it, and we really don't know where all the data and all that knowledge will take us. Similarly, with the James Webb telescope, the data it will generate and the knowledge it will create is tremendous, and it will open up our eyes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, seek knowledge and I will open up the gates of knowledge for you. And that is the lesson we should take from all the technological advances and all the things that humanity is able to do with the grace of Allah. Thank you very much.
We're not working. There we go. Thank you, Professor Rahil. I do want to mention that Professor Dr. Elchin Babayev is joining us virtually, so we'd like to have his opening comments, if he would please join us virtually for those.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank also organizers for inviting me. And unfortunately, I couldn't come to Rabat, my lovely city, because of the serious reasons. But I am here And of course, we are here to join our efforts. And to be honest, I like very much Christina Korp's organization's name, Space for Better World. What we have to do to make the world better, and the space must help us. And in this direction, we have to join, as I mentioned, our efforts. Unfortunately, I'm not astronaut, but I'm astrophysicist, and I love space. And as a solar physicist, I love the sun. And where this love starts, it starts in schools, in universities. And so we have to think about the cooperation in education. And for that, we have a great field of cooperation. And for example, today I have learned from Professor Nakasuka about the UNICEF programs that it became already global UNICEF program. And we are also ready to join. Azerbaijan became a Cosmic Club member. We have launched 3 satellites. Maybe you think that it's not enough, but I think it's enough for us for cooperation and for enlarging our activities. So I think we have to think about preparing the potential for human resources and capacity building, and going through education, bachelor, magistrate level, and even the doctorate level. I think we can have dual diplomas, even triple diplomas. Why not? For example, we can have 2 countries from Islamic network, and also we can have somebody from other European or Asian countries. In this case, we can rely on the help of ESA, NASA, JAXA, or other agencies, and we are ready for cooperation. And also we are ready to host one of these events in future, in coming future, in Azerbaijan, and that's to be ready for this cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, what I'd like to do is, this is not in your questions today, so this will be a surprise. I'm waiting for the translation. We have a very exciting week here at ICESCO, and thank you to His Excellency and the Planning Committee. You're going to have the first CANSAT workshop being held here at the ICESCO headquarters for 3 days, and then 2 days in Okamiden, Marrakech. I think I got Marrakech right, but maybe not Okamiden, with the closing ceremony at Cadi Ayyad University. What I'd like to do is ask each of the partner organizations of ICESCO, Cadi Ayyad University, and the International University of Rabat, each of you to share a little bit about what will take place with the CANSAT this week and your role in supporting that through your university, and what the goals are when we come to the end of the week for the graduates. So, Dr. Raheel, would you like to start?
Thank you, Shelley. Well, basically, ICESCO's goal is to sort of ignite this flame of space exploration and all the technologies that are there available in space. So that is in our member states. As you know, that we have 54 member states, and most of our member states, some of our member states are impoverished, but we want to show to them also that using very low-cost technologies and not too much money, you can really be partners in this excitement which is going on of space technology, and you can really, do things in the ecosystem that will be helpful in space travel and all that. We do realize that for most of our member countries, it's not possible for them to go in space per se, but they can be part of this exciting journey that is being undertaken by humanity in general. So that is basically our purpose.
Thank you very much. Professor Habib, would you like to share about your university's role?
C'est bon. Bon, le rôle de notre université, d'abord, notre université, il prend un certain leadership au niveau de la région dans le domaine. D'abord, grâce à des formations que nous avons à l'échelle de l'université, comme le master de physique de hautes énergies et d'astrophysique et de computational physique, qui est à la fac des sciences, et puis d'autres modules dans d'autres formations. Comme j'ai dit, nous avons déjà un certain nombre de clubs d'astronomie, d'associations d'astronomie, c'est le volet sensibilisation. Mais avec cet atelier, l'objectif est de sensibiliser un peu plus, de fédérer les efforts des États membres de l'ICESCO, des pays représentés ici, et c'est pour, à mon sens, si on arrive par là à mettre en place des formations avec double diplomation, au multidiplôme, des formations internationales, des co-tutelles, des recherches qui seront faites ou co-supervisées par des collègues des universités représentées ici. Je pense que cet objectif-là n'est pas loin. Et je pense qu'avec l'atelier que nous allons organiser, il permettra à nos étudiants, à nos chercheurs de connaître un petit peu l'étendue de l'espace, des sciences de l'espace, parce que les sciences de l'espace, c'est pas toujours aller vers des autres planètes, mais il y a énormément de choses qu'on peut développer, qui sont utiles pour la télédétection, par exemple, et ses applications pour l'agriculture et pour suivre un petit peu la sécheresse, en termes de télécommunications, en termes de comment on peut gérer les débris des satellites qui tombent, etc. Donc il y a un certain nombre de projets auxquels on peut greffer ou peuvent intéresser énormément de scientifiques en physique, en mathématiques, en informatique, en chimie, en biologie, en agrosciences. Donc c'est un domaine pluridisciplinaire, même si c'est une science, comme j'ai dit, on a l'idée que toujours l'astronomie est une science fondamentale. Il faut développer les sciences fondamentales. Pour le mathématicien, je dirais pour le simple mathématicien que je suis, la science fondamentale sont à la base de développement des sciences appliquées. Et donc ce genre d'atelier a pour objectif d'abord de fédérer, de faire connaître les gens qui viennent d'horizons différents, d'universités différentes, et réfléchir à des initiatives. J'avais cité l'initiative de son Excellence Modibo Diarra, mais on peut réfléchir à d'autres initiatives pour connecter le maximum de chercheurs autour de projets stratégiques pour nos pays. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Oui, merci beaucoup. Donc, je voudrais d'abord faire écho à ce que a dit le docteur professeur Rahil, et pour faire peut-être une première recommandation, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, il y a réellement besoin de créer des synergies et des masses critiques. Et comme le rôle aujourd'hui distingué de l'ICESCO dans ce domaine, de promouvoir la technologie et les études spatiales au niveau du monde islamique, arabe et africain, peut-être l'une des recommandations, ce serait de créer un réseau des écoles de ces pays africains et arabes qui opèrent dans le domaine du spatial, ce qui permettrait d'avoir en tout cas de l'expertise au niveau de notre continent. Je parle du continent africain, qui, comme vous le savez, aujourd'hui, à travers l'Agence spatiale africaine, donc il y a tout un programme qui a été développé par les leaders africains, justement pour explorer les opportunités qu'offre aujourd'hui la maîtrise du domaine spatial, avec toutes ces retombées qui ont été soulignées ce matin et qui viennent d'être soulignées. Or, cela nécessite d'avoir également des moyens, parce qu'on le sait, le continent africain aujourd'hui, qui représente 20% des terres, c'est l'équivalent de ce que représentent les États-Unis, l'Europe et peut-être la Chine confondus, ne dépense que moins de 0,3% au niveau d'un domaine spatial, alors qu'il y a des opportunités énormes aujourd'hui je dirais, à saisir. L'Université internationale de Rabat était consciente, en tout cas, de l'enjeu de l'évolution de ces technologies futuristes. Et c'est dans ce sens-là qu'elle a créé, depuis 2011, la première école d'aérospatiale au niveau du Maroc. Et c'est une école qui a été créée en normes internationales dans le cadre d'une coopération internationale avec des grandes universités comme l'Université de Mississippi, Mississippi State University et Georgia Tech Institute of Atlanta. Et aujourd'hui, elle forme des ingénieurs qui maîtrisent un certain nombre de connaissances dans des domaines comme, bien sûr, l'ingénierie, la mécanique, l'électronique, mais également dans des domaines connexes très utiles aujourd'hui pour le spatial, à savoir dans le domaine du big data, dans le domaine de la cybersécurité, dans le domaine des systèmes embarqués. Et cette expertise aujourd'hui, elle existe, puisque un certain nombre, je peux dire qu'il y a une cinquantaine aujourd'hui d'experts qui sont formés au niveau PhD, c'est-à-dire qui ont déjà eu leur doctorat dans des universités américaines et qui ne demandent qu'à être, entre guillemets, si j'ose dire, utilisés pour accompagner l'essor de l'industrie et de la technologie spatiale au niveau non seulement au niveau du Maroc, mais également au niveau de l'Afrique. Parmi les autres choses que l'université a développées, c'est que dans le cadre d'une collaboration avec la Royal Air Maroc, elle a mis en place une formation pour la formation des pilotes de ligne. Elle a formé une quarantaine de personnes dans le cadre toujours d'une collaboration avec l'École nationale de l'aviation civile de Toulouse. Et ces ressources qui sont aujourd'hui formées ont un exemple d'une collaboration internationale sans frontières pour préparer, en tout cas, des ressources de l'expertise dans ce domaine-là. Aujourd'hui, il y a un potentiel, mais il y a besoin d'avoir des réseaux, par exemple, pour pouvoir disposer des images de satellites. Par exemple, NASA dispose aujourd'hui de beaucoup d'images satellitaires. Il y en a quelques-unes qui sont à disposition. Mais je pense que l'une des initiatives que peut être entamée et à travers peut-être l'ICESCO et les organisateurs et les leaders ici présents, c'est dans quelle mesure on peut disposer de ces images satellitaires pour les exploiter d'abord pour des retombées de développement de nos pays socio-économiques, mais également pour donner envie à des jeunes aujourd'hui de se projeter dans un avenir où la technologie spatiale est également une opportunité de travail. Nous avons au Maroc 2 centres qui traitent de cette thématique-là et je voudrais souligner leur coopération avec les universités. Je citerai le Centre royal d'études et de recherche spatiale et je citerai ici un exemple de travail que j'ai pu faire avec ce centre-là quand j'étais à la direction du Centre national pour la recherche scientifique et technique. Nous avons pu réunir des centaines de chercheurs à travers le Maroc qui s'intéressaient justement à ce domaine-là. Et nous avons mis des équipes en place et ces équipes ont commencé un petit peu à travailler sur un projet, multitâche, qui concerne tous les composants. Et l'objectif, c'est de mettre sur orbite un CubeSat pour bien sûr des besoins de recherche, mais également pour des besoins, de pratique, pour montrer qu'au niveau du Maroc, comme dans d'autres pays, comme ça vient d'être cité par les orateurs, on peut réunir les compétences pour lancer notamment des satellites d'usage civil, et ceci va droit avec la politique nationale et la politique africaine, puisque à date d'aujourd'hui, il y a 11 satellites qui ont été lancés, dont 2 par le Maroc. C'est dire l'importance aujourd'hui d'accompagner cet élan-là, et ça ne peut être accompagné que par la formation actualisée sur les nouveautés, mais également à travers peut-être réfléchir à un moment donné de disposer de budget et de financement nécessaires pour que les universités et ces pays-là puissent également relever le challenge aujourd'hui, qui est dans quelle mesure on peut exploiter les données spatiales pour les besoins, que ce soit des besoins civils ou bien sûr des besoins de souveraineté d'État. Merci.
Merci. What I'd like to do, if possible, can we bring our 2 panelists up that are virtual with us? I'd like to ask them a question. Professor Babayev and Professor Nakasuka, if you're...
Hello, sorry, I cannot hear your question, sorry. Would you say it again?
Yes, can you hear us, Professor Nakasuka?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Wonderful. I'd like to ask you a question about how can space exploration help the environment here on Earth?
Yeah, sorry, space, I can hear you well. Would you say it again? Sorry.
Absolutely. How can space exploration help the environment here on Earth?
Oh, thank you very much. I understand. Yeah, I think I know. Maybe space exploration, like for example, the Mars or other planet, will give us a lot of new insight into, for example, how the planet will go into the future, become into the future. And I think by getting such kind of the information, we may have some solution of how to make the Earth sustainable into the future. I think that kind of the information gathering from the planets or other space bodies would be very beneficial to make the sustainable Earth. So that is my answer.
Thank you so much. Professor Dr. Babayev, if you could answer the same question. How can...
Yes, thank you very much for your question, but the answer is quite wide, but I can mention here some moments. For example, space measurement, monitoring, space hazards, and also we can use artificial satellites and spacecrafts just to monitor the situation on the Earth, and especially we have to pay attention to the climate, space debris, and what's happening on the Earth, starting from the forest and also the climate change, as I mentioned here. The monitoring of globe and especially polar situation, and of course, here I think we can rely on space weather monitoring systems, and they could be short-term and long-term. And for example, we are doing the same research works in Azerbaijan, but we also cooperate with our colleagues from different countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Professor Aslan, I'd like to ask you, what is the best investment area for space?
Well, thanks, Shelley. What's the best investment area? Well, I mean, from my point of view, it will be small satellites. Let me give you an example. Again, almost every year, a number of entrepreneurs, industry people come and talk to me, and they present their ambition since they've been doing good work and accumulated some funds, and they would like to use that in space. Well, of course, for the reason we've mentioned earlier. And then, well, there is also, to the question you asked to other presenters, there is a linkage to that. That is to make more use of space. Well, the space systems, if we put it very simply, apart from even the manned missions, and it's all data collecting systems. So we collect data so that we can use this data for the benefit of our life. And small satellites being affordable and with short development times, and the most important thing, we can use them as a constellation. That is a lot of them working together, collecting lots of data. Well, of course, data processing is another issue, and it should be automatic as well. now we have a new company, and we have completed a CubeSat in 6 months, and it's operational. I think that's a record in its own. And it was my 7th CubeSat into orbit. And I would suggest, well, if you like, to put your funds in the small satellite technology constellation. Now, Internet of Things is very critical. Well, there are means of making systems or controlling the systems for better use. And space, because particularly low Earth orbit, it has a ubiquitous future. Once you place a system into space, you can see all Earth. And this has great benefit and also economy. That's why I would repeat again, small satellites. And again, this week, within the training, we are going to stress the project-based education. And one important thing is we are going to present the life cycle of a space system, from idea to end of mission, and all the steps, as my friend Prof. Nakasuka pointed out. And I think that's critical because it is both affordable and very beneficial. For example, when you become part of a very large space project, you only know your part. But when you are dealing with CubeSat, well, CubeSat is also not so easy, but with model satellite CanSat, in a very short time, you will be familiar with the complete life cycle of the project, and I think that's critical.
Thank you so much. So Christina, based on your experience, what's the biggest obstacle to getting more people and countries as part of the global space community?
Well, I think the biggest obstacle, number one, is the general public doesn't really know what's going on in space. I think that's something that the space community is very good at, is talking to each other. And so that's why I'm passionate about trying to find ways to invite more people in to see how space relates to them. It's kind of shocking how little regular people understand, even very educated people, that they are using space technology all the time, every single day. I don't know if you've ever heard of Professor Brian Cox, who's a very famous physicist from the UK. He's got a big TV show called Stargazing, and he's very well known in many parts of the world. And he was telling me recently that he had lunch with a friend who was a professor, I think from Cambridge. And that man said, "Why do I need to care about space? I don't need to care about space. It has nothing to do with me." And Professor Brian Cox said, "Well, hold on a second. Just think about how you use space every day. Just think of GPS." And the man said, "I don't need GPS in orbit. I've got GPS on my phone." This is the problem. So there are a lot of educated people who talk to a lot of other educated people. A lot of space people talk to a lot of space people. But they're not necessarily getting the word out to the general public to understand what's going on in space. And I think for the young generation, especially young people now, they care a lot about our planet. And they want to be a part of the solution of finding ways to save our planet. They're worried about their future. And I feel strongly that space and space tech is the key to solving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And when I say that to people who are not in space, they look at me very skeptically. But I really truly believe that space could be a major factor in solving each one of those Sustainable Development Goals. And when I tell people who care about the oceans, about how we monitor the oceans and the polar ice caps, or I know the world's foremost expert on whale sharks. He uses NASA's star tracking software to track the whale sharks all over the world. And he said it's the only software he could find that helped him do that. That's an important thing that people, people who are not in space, I don't know if they're paying attention to that. But when people who are outside of space start looking to space for the solutions, to find ways to do better in their own fields. I'll give you another example. I was getting on a plane to go to Space Symposium, actually. I was in London, and there was a man next to us who said he was in charge of most of the farms in France. And I said, oh, do you use hyperspectral imaging? Have you ever thought of using that to help you plant your crops better? He said, what is hyperspectral imaging? And this was a man who was in charge of many, many farms all over France, and he had no idea this resource in space technology that is at his disposal. And this is, this is something, and those of you who don't know what hyperspectral imaging is, it will help you with satellites in orbit find the areas where you should plant your crops, where you'll get a better yield, where you'll be able to, where you shouldn't plant your crops, where maybe the land is not the perfect place for the type of crop that you're going to plant, that there's better rainfall or the way that it will flow. There are so many interesting things, but here's a perfect example of a person outside of space who didn't realize this was a resource for them. So the biggest obstacle to me is that a lot of information is just being shared within the space community, and it's not necessarily being shared in an accessible way outside of space. And that's where I feel I can help bridge that gap of awareness. That's why I started my foundation, Space for a Better World. I thought, maybe someone like me who came from outside of space, can help tell this story in a way that regular people understand. I think a lot of times when they hear really technical words, technical data, technical terms, they feel really intimidated about entering the space world. And I'm not talking just about young people or people who don't work in tech. I'm talking about people who are heads of companies, heads of influential organizations who worry that they're not smart enough to work in space. And so I really want to try my hardest to explain in a way that's accessible. And by the way, I do this with the help of astronauts. I'm known as the astronaut wrangler. This is a term I gave myself because I work with lots of astronauts, and I joke that people call me the astronaut whisperer. I say I'm the astronaut wrangler because whispering is not really the word. But my point is that I'm working with astronauts like Dr. Proctor, like Nicole Stott, who's a NASA astronaut, Susan Kilrain, who's a NASA astronaut, Navy test pilot. I work with Charlie Duke, Apollo 16 astronaut. And So-Young Yi, the only Korean ever to go to space. And I bring that up because they are all very passionate about this as well. They want to work with me to try to do storytelling, do information campaigns that are inspirational. I think that if you inspire people, I always say, yes, education is extremely important. Information is extremely important. But the inspiration part is the part that makes people want to learn, want to be a part of it. So that's where I feel my strongest advantage that I have is to helping to inspire. And I think that's an obstacle that has to be overcome, which is don't forget about the inspiration part. That's what spurred on the world through the moon landings. That's what's spurring on the world here with James Webb and these images. A lot of people who don't know a lot about satellites or even about what James Webb is, see these images of space, and that inspires them to want to learn more. So that's my take on it.
Well, thank you, Christina. What I'd like to do is give each of our panelists a few minutes to provide any closing statements on anything that we may have missed. So please feel free to share any closing statements. Professor.
Merci beaucoup. Pour clôturer, je voudrais faire écho aux propos de Madame Christina Korp. Je me souscris à ce qu'elle vient de dire. Et nous avons vécu une expérience très intéressante avec l'Agence spatiale européenne quand elle nous a sollicité pour être le point focal pour le hackathon Act in Space. Act in Space, qui est un hackathon qui consiste en tout cas à mettre en compétition les étudiants pour exploiter donc les innovations spatiales pour les usages de la vie courante. Et c'est comme ça que nous avons été le point focal et nous avons organisé ce hackathon. Et nous avons eu, la joie de voir un certain nombre d'étudiants prendre en charge un certain nombre de défis de l'Agence spatiale européenne et ils ont pu élaborer un certain nombre de projets. Je peux citer 3 types de projets, dont 2 projets sont actuellement utilisés. Un, c'est dans le domaine de l'agriculture, c'est la surveillance de la récolte au niveau de l'agriculture en utilisant des drones. Le deuxième projet qui est également porté par un lauréat aujourd'hui de l'Université internationale de Rabat et qui consiste à utiliser des drones pour optimiser en tout cas les pesticides au niveau des grands champs d'agriculture. Et l'autre qui a été porté par des étudiants d'Afrique subsaharienne qui étaient également lauréats de l'université, c'est comment utiliser ces innovations pour arrêter l'avancement du désert. Donc, parce qu'il y a la problématique de la désertification. Et voilà, donc je pense que ce type d'événement peut être aussi utile non seulement pour le grand public, puisqu'après il y a une couverture médiatique par le grand public pour voir un petit peu les retombées de la recherche et des innovations spatiales pour le quotidien. Je voudrais aussi conclure pour dire qu'il y a cet élan aujourd'hui qui est lancé, je pense même depuis 2 ans, par l'ICESCO que je tiens à saluer d'abord au nom de l'Université internationale de Rabat. Et nous nous inscrivons dans cette initiative et nous souhaitons que ça soit amplifié à travers la mise en réseau d'un certain nombre d'écoles d'ingénieurs dans les pays africains et arabes, mais surtout de militer avec les universités dans ce monde-là pour pouvoir avoir le maximum d'images satellitaires à exploiter en attendant bien sûr que les universités peuvent développer dans le cadre d'une coopération peut-être beaucoup plus internationalisée des petits satellites pour des usages quotidiens dont les retombées sont énormes, que ce soit pour le domaine de la santé, de l'agriculture, comme ça vient d'être dit, mais également pour la surveillance des flux migratoires, surtout dans des pays où nous avons vécu récemment un drame de ce type-là. Et ces technologies spatiales peuvent minimiser ou bien éviter à ce qu'on arrive à des catastrophes de ce type-là. En tout cas, merci beaucoup pour votre modération et nous nous retrouverons peut-être dans le panel suivant. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, Messi. And Professor Habib, any closing comments?
Moi, je voudrais juste revenir à la question de l'exploration spatiale. Est-ce qu'il peut aider au niveau de l'environnement ici sur Terre? C'est pour dire que nous avons, et nous le savons aujourd'hui, que les satellites sont des alliés incontournables et indispensables pour cartographier les rejets humains et l'évolution de notre climat et surveiller les émissions CO2 qui sont dues aux activités humaines, mais aussi l'espace nous promet bien d'autres solutions pour sauver l'environnement terrestre, du minage d'astéroïdes, passant par les bases sur la Lune, aux usines sur orbite, et j'en passe. Mais selon l'Agence de l'environnement et de la maîtrise de l'énergie, et puis l'association Bilan Carbone, ABC, le télescope spatial James Webb, qui est d'une valeur de 10 milliards de dollars, et le futur radiotélescope géant Square Kilometers Array, en Afrique du Sud et en Australie, seraient à eux seuls responsables de l'équivalent d'au moins 300 000 tonnes de CO2, une empreinte carbone qui perturbe fortement le climat et l'environnement. Ce qui nous amène à nous poser la question, l'astronomie devrait-elle à son tour être plus verte? Et je crois que les propositions qu'on vient d'entendre d'avoir des petits satellites à usage, je dirais, domestique, entre guillemets, à usage scientifique, est une piste très encourageante à explorer. Je souhaite aussi profiter de ce panel et de cette rencontre pour dire qu'à l'université Cadi Ayyad, nous sommes tellement disposés de s'ouvrir sur d'autres universités pour co-construire des programmes pour promouvoir cette science. Et comme j'ai dit tout à l'heure, c'est une science qui n'est pas récente, même si il a pris plus de développement depuis les années 60. Mais aujourd'hui, on peut revenir. Je sais que pendant la chute de Grenade, il y avait toute une équipe de mathématiciens d'origine, de confession juive, qui sont venus, parce que le Maroc, c'était toujours un pays d'ouverture, de tolérance, de dialogue, de civilisation, qui sont venus rejoindre Ibn al-Banna al-Murrakushi, qui est un mathématicien arabe. Et à cette époque-là, il y avait des écrits où l'espace et les sciences de l'espace étaient présents. En particulier, je me rappelle d'une célèbre formule de trigonométrie en coordonnées sphériques que beaucoup, à partir de moi-même aujourd'hui, auront des difficultés à résoudre, et dont l'objectif était comment orienter les mihrabs. Les mihrabs dans les mosquées, c'est pour être bien positionné vis-à-vis de la Mecque. Et cette formule qui nous a été présentée à partir de travaux de notre ami Ahmed Jabbar, qui est un mathématicien maghrébin qui travaille sur l'histoire des sciences, et en particulier l'histoire des mathématiques. Et cette formule, il montre bien comment les sciences spatiales étaient bien développées dans le monde musulman. Bien sûr, on l'utilise pour suivre les mois lunaires, etc. Donc il y a tout un passé, un historique, mais il y a aussi de la volonté pour aller de l'avant dans nos pays, et puis en s'ouvrant sur l'Europe, sur l'Amérique du Nord, sur le reste du monde, sur l'Asie, pour essayer de travailler. D'abord, nous sommes toujours des ferveurs encourageants de la coopération sud-sud, en particulier au niveau de l'Afrique, mais on s'ouvre sur le monde, ce que j'appelle la coopération sud-nord-sud, pour développer ce domaine qui est un domaine très très opportun et qui a un impact très important sur le développement économique et social. J'ajouterai juste pour conclure, c'est que en parlant de développement économique et social, nous avons un large programme à Locaïmden que vous aurez l'occasion de visiter en fin de semaine. C'est pour montrer que les sciences de l'espace peuvent aussi être un artifice pour le développement de programmes culturels et touristiques. C'est-à-dire, nous avons un programme qu'autour du centre de Locaïmden, de l'observatoire, de développer un écosystème culturel et touristique qui peut aider au développement de la région de la province de l'Haouz et la province de Locaïmden. C'est un travail sur lequel on se penche avec le professeur Ben Khaldoun. Je vous remercie.
Merci. Professor Dr. Aslan, any closing comments or thoughts?
Okay, I thanks again the organizers for this good event. I would like to stress one point, that today any person or any nation can develop space technology, and project-based education and international cooperation is critical for that. In that respect, well, anybody is welcome to join UNISEC Global or similar institutions. And we are going to have the 11th Nanosatellite Symposium and 8th UNISEC Global Meeting in Istanbul, 17 to 21 October. You are all very welcome, and you can contact me if you need some support. And, well, thanks again.
Thank you so much. Christina, any closing comments?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you, Shelley, of course, for moderating, because Shelley's the one who introduced me to ICESCO, so it's her fault that I'm here, and Cyan as well. I just want to say that, you know, the thing I love about space is that it's the best example of peaceful cooperation in the world. You know, there are many nations working together in space at the International Space Station. I mean, seeing all of you here, this is the best of space. And I think that, you know, what space does is it reminds us that we're humans on the same planet. And that is the most valuable thing that we can learn, and that we need to work together. So I'm always trying to find ways to work together. I would love to have the opportunity to work with you. We have a whole group of astronauts that I work with that are eager to come and represent as women in space, and to be able to share our stories and hopefully inspire others. I will be moderating a panel later this afternoon that's about women empowerment with a stage full of ladies, so I'm excited about that, to give our perspective of women in space, to hopefully inspire more women and girls and people from diverse backgrounds to find their place in space. And if you want to learn more about me and what I'm trying to do, you can go to spaceforabetterworld.com, and that's my own nonprofit that I started to try to inspire people to join space, connect the space curious and to the space serious. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Dr. Rahil, any closing comments?
Yes, thank you very much. What Christina said earlier, you know, we scientists, we don't speak the lingo of the common man, and I think that's the biggest problem. But this single image of Karina has changed that completely, and people have started talking about space now. I was hearing a cleric the other day. By the way, this image that you see, it is 7,600 light years away. And imagine the clarity that we are looking at with this. The Hubble telescope was an optical telescope, whereas the WebEx, this telescope is a telescope based on IR, infrared. So it has a larger definition, and it has a very good optical resolution. So this single image is transforming the way we talk about space, and clerics have started talking about space also. I was listening to a cleric the other day, and he said, you know, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran about the falling stars. This is exactly what it is. The light that you are seeing from this nebula is 7,600 year old. And that nebula or those stars are not at the same place any longer. So this simple understanding of space and the different celestial bodies is really now increasing the scope of understanding of not just religion but of the common man also. Like they say, I'm a Trekkie fan, so like they say, space the final frontier. I think it is here for us now to conquer it. Thank you.
Let's live long and prosper, Dr. Rahil. Okay, I do have our two panelists that are virtual, so I'd like to go to Dr. Babayev. Do you have any closing comments for us?
Thank you very much, Shelley, for management of this session. And space now is very important for today's critical infrastructure, also for biological and ecological system. That's why we have to continue efforts in preparing talented specialists on space, as well as we have to continue better distribution of instrumentation on the Earth and also in near Earth space, and especially to pay attention to developing countries. But here we have to think once again about cooperation. And the last important point is public awareness. Everybody here already mentioned how it's important. So these three directions are quite important to invest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to end where we started with Dr. Nakasuka providing the final closing comments.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this wonderful symposium. I really enjoyed the talk. And I think education would be very, very important. That will be the key to make the Earth sustainable. And we need the variety of the people and the variety of the way to educate the people will be required. And as my friend Rustam said, practical training using a micro nano pico satellite or CANSAT would be a very good way to educate the people in many ways. So, and the CANSAT, as I said in my presentation, is a very affordable and quick and cheap way to start such kind of the training. So I'd like to recommend you to do the CANSAT education. Anyway, thank you very much. and hope to see you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. So what I'd like to do is for our panelists, if you will please remain when I excuse everyone else so we can do a photo. And for the ministerial session, for any of the ministers that have remained, we would like to do a photo with you. For everyone else, please take and enjoy a 15-minute break. Thank you so much.